To speak to us about the motivations behind increased spending during holiday periods such as Easter, we are now joined by clinical psychologist and founder of Cohesive Collaboration, Sikander Kalla, and he joins us via our video link. Sikander, thank you so much for your time this evening. Why would you say that there is an increased amount of spending when it comes to consumers during this Easter period?
Good evening, Mbalin. Good evening to the viewers. I think it's a pertinent question given the fact that we are also in inflationary periods and a high cost of living period. So I think it really begs the question, why are we seeing this trend to tilt towards more spending behavior at this time? And I think it's a multivariate problem, and multivariate analysis can also unpack why we're experiencing all of this. So I think because of the multiple factors, I'll start off more on the internal side of it and then look at some of the external factors as well. So I think on the internal side, there's few things we need to factor in. I think in times where cost of living is quite high, people's pockets are being stretched to their limit, and I think people then turn to more consumer debt. And there's a lot of studies that show when one is utilizing like a credit card, for example, or tapping with their phone using a credit facility, there's a bit of a detachment to the quantity of money that they're spending, as well as the implications that has on their overall budget. So you find studies have shown it activates the reward center when we're paying with a credit card, because we're mostly fixated on the goods or the purchases that we're making. So our mind immediately goes into the space of, I want this, I'm getting it. And we experience that gratification in a way that can sometimes be quite pleasurable and maybe even border on quite addictive. And the big issue with that also is there's often a delayed onset to the implications or the consequences. So often you pay and you swipe and you're making all these transactions in real time and getting that dopamine hit of the satisfaction of buying what you want in real time. But the credit card bill comes to bite you a month later or 2 months later, and people then fall into that trap of spending money right now and suffering the consequences down the line. And it also creates this distortion on affordability, because it's not, can I really afford this item? It starts becoming, can I afford the minimum payments for the credit facility, which then comes with its own interest implications and sometimes can be this deep abyss that you drown yourself further and further into. So I think that's one of the aspects that we need to consider, just the aspect of the detachment with money in moments like that when we're just making plastic swipes or digital swipes with our card. Another factor during this period as well is, societal pressures. We have, whether it's from friendships, a partner, family, there's more expectations, expectations of, this is a social time, this is a time to connect. And in South Africa, we tend to connect over food, we tend to connect over drinks, we tend to connect in ways that require some form of spending. And sometimes that emanates from a place of the responsibility to connect with individuals or to cater to needs. And other times it feels like an obligation that I'm now in the social setting, I'm with family that I haven't connected with in a while, let me spend a bit more. So that is a big thing that we need to think about. And I think it's important to think, do I feel pressured? Do I feel this is an actual responsibility and obligation? Or sometimes even from an identity perspective, are we compensating for something as well? Like, do we feel that we add value to spaces through material material possessions or through throwing money at needs? So I think we also need to be mindful of those sort of triggers at play, and then how best to navigate through the intricacies of some of that.
And Sikander, what would you say when it comes to, some of the behavior patterns you see, especially during this period? What is the impact of it all, especially during a time where, the economy is not doing great and a number of people are tapping into credit facilities? And like you're saying, that there's this detachment from using your credit card or your plastic card, to swipe for these goods when you're at retailers. What is the impact of that?
I think the overall impact is you're kicking, at the present moment, you may be able to fulfill those expectations. But when it comes down to, are you able to effectively meet the financial obligations that you have to your credit lender, I think that's when you start realizing a completely different picture. And what ends up happening is there may be a social component now to alleviate that social anxiety and to play that social role, but down the line, you're now facing a different sort of monster. And so you've substituted a social monster or an expectation monster for a financial monster down the line. And often what that results in is quite an overwhelming sense of stress, anxiety, despair, disillusionment, feeling like I'm in this rut that I just can't get out of. The bills are ticking up more and more and more, and that can create a whole array of mental health difficulties as well. So I think it's very important for one to consider the implications and then think, how best can I mitigate some of these implications? And I think, before we even go to how, I think one of the most important things is to figure out the why, especially when we're talking about sustainable change in behavior. So it really needs to come from a place of, why am I engaging in these sort of spending behaviors at this point, for me at the individual level, and for me as someone who functions within a social milieu, and then trying to figure out how best to navigate through that. Often what I found was that the best ways to navigate through this is effective communication, like communicating limitations and boundaries with the individuals around you and saying, hey, this is all I can afford. This is my limitation.
Yeah.
And it's not an easy conversation to have, but if you have it early on, you save yourself a lot of trouble down the line. I think we can also explore like behavioral interventions, effective budgeting, taking a shopping list to the shopping center that you're going to, monitoring your balances after, and even your expected income after each significant purchase, managing that and monitoring it in real time, rather than waiting to be down the line. So I found that those strategies can allow for better attunement to our spending behavior. And through doing that, we really better, because I also don't want us to villainize spending. I think if it's coming from an informed position and it's within reasonable parameters of affordability, I think it's meaningful, that offers some form of nourishment. Not only is it good for the individual level on the well-being side, but it's also good for the economy. I think coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic, we're trying to revive the retail sector. So there's pros and cons all around, but I think if it comes from informed decision, I think that is best for every stakeholder involved.
Sikander, thank you so much for your time this evening here in SABC News. That is Sikander Kalla. He is a clinical psychologist as well as the founder of Cohesive Collaboration.